Hello, friends, fans, and followers. Welcome back to another episode of Tracking Deer with Dogs. I am Matt with Tails on Trails Deer Tracking. Today we are going to talk about false lines, the effects of false lines. Do a short segment on false lines. I referenced it when several times on other broadcasts. We're going to use the same track line that I used to illustrate the effects of scent drift. But we're going to look at the whole track this time. The scent drift line, we only looked at just a small segment of the line. We're going to look at the entire line on this one, the original track, and show you what the false lines in the goose chases that we went on as a result of the hunter searching for his deer as he should have done. So this track was our last track of the season, track number 42. Again, it's Lake Hudson State Game Area, south of Jackson, about an hour. I took this track. The hunter called another local tracker. That tracker couldn't take the track and called me and asked me if I could. And well, of course, I'd be glad to help. So we took the track, went down, and the track line we're going to look at today was the first day. We recovered the deer on the second day. We did not recover it the first day. We were there too early. I'm not going to get into all of the shot and all of that. That was done in scent drift. In fact, maybe I'll copy the link to scent drift in this description if you want to go back and see that. It's also available on Tails on Trails Deer Tracking, Facebook and YouTube if you want to scroll through there and find them. But we did recover the deer the next day. So the shot was a one long liver gut. We checked that out when we got at the deer, but I wanted to just use this track line and show you what happens when the scent gets tracked around. Now, the hunter did nothing wrong on this track. I want to be perfectly clear. I don't use this as an example, to shame anybody. I use this just to tell you, factually what can happen and the impact it can have, and more to underscore the resistance to truly grid search if a dog is an option for you. If a dog's not an option for you, or you had a dog out and the dog couldn't recover it, and then you grid search, yes, that's absolutely the right thing to do. But that's really the intent of this broadcast, is to show you what tracking the deer scent can do, creating false lines. So again, the hunter did everything. He did what he should have done here. But let me pull it up. I'll show you, and we'll walk through it a little bit here. Yeah, here it is here. So the red circles are the false lines, and I'll speak briefly about this track and then these pictures over here. But these red circles are the false lines. It's a little bit foggy to me, the actual sequence of events as it relates to which false line came first, when we found this gut pile and everything. But let me just walk through it real quick. So obviously this is the shot site back here at the top of the screen. That is what direction is that? That is west. That's west. So the shot site was back here. There was good blood in the sense that there was a lot of trackable blood back here. Then it dwindled out very quickly. But we started at the shot site. Baru was tracking very solidly along here very, very, very well. This is where the deer was. Remember, in scent drift, I talked about this deer. I'm going to talk here in a minute about how I think the deer got here. But at the time we're creating this yellow track line, this original line, the deer is not laying here. We would have walked within feet of where that deer was, literally, if feet. But so the deer wasn't there. So Bruce tracking along here, and then we get to this area right here, this little cluster of circles, I guess. That was those were some wound beds. That was on the edge. It was a mowed path where she's tracking along here, but this was just inside that mowed path, just off that mowed path rather. There was some wound beds there. The deer had laid there. Um, so she was working through that. She worked through that very, not very quickly, but appropriately. She worked through that. Then she kicked out of those weeds. She found where the deer exited. There were 2 or 3 beds, I think, in here. No blood in them, that I noticed anyway. Um, and then she kicked out of here and she started working up here. She got up to this area, um, and she spent a lot of time in this here. She paused, I guess I'll say. She paused right here. We're going to come back to this spot. That's why it's marked right here. Ultimately, this was where we found, last blood, if you will. But then she worked past this and she come up here to this other path. You see these are paths right here, mowed areas. And we took what was a left turn, and then we took this quick right turn up this other path. She's tracking the whole time, so I'm letting her go. I'm like, okay, cool, you know. And then she got up to this path right here on this right turn, and she just started. We went up there, 15 yards or so, and she quit advancing. She started circling and looking for, trying to reacquire the scent. That's when the hunter had caught up to us and said, "Hey, I walked up there." I go, "How far did you go?" He says, "Right where you're at." So that told me then that okay, Baru was tracking him because she went exactly where he was, and then couldn't advance past where he stopped and turned around. you know so then I'm trying to remember just exactly where we went from here. I think after this one she picked a line and started going down the path this way, and then she took this left turn. Well, this left turn is the path back to the parking area. Remember, this is state land, so the parking area is down here where this red X pin is. So I'm like, well, this is no good. She's tracking him back to his truck. So we came back. Um, we came back here, and then the hunter ended up finding some blood right underneath this bush. Um, there was some blood on the ground. I'm like, okay, cool, we got blood. So, but really wasn't sure where the deer went. It was just a small piece of blood right on the edge of the mowed path, right on the edge of the bush. Um, I believe then at that point, Bruce started backtracking, and I'm letting her go. And she come back to this area again a little bit. She spent a minute here, and then she cut off across this grass to this tree line here. There's a little bit of a tree line that comes along here, and it was a bunch of downfalls, trees. It was a nice little area. Very plausible that a deer was there. A lot of deer sign there. So, and she's tracking, so I'm letting her track. Then pretty soon the hunter comes on the radio and says, "Hey, I walked down there." I'm like, "Darn it." Okay, but she's tracking and we don't know where the deer went. So I let her go because maybe she's on the deer. So I let her go. Then we get off here into the woods, and that's where we're really starting to think that I don't think this is the line, particularly considering the hunter said that he walked down here. But she picked up a hotline in here and she just started going. And I'm like, well, you never know. Let's just see. Then she started getting vocal. I'm like, okay, we're on a live deer. I don't, I really don't think so. Then we walked back, and that's what this line is here, walking back. I told the hunter on the radio, says, look, meet me back at that last blood. So then we come up and we cut across here to this last blood. So we're looking at last blood, and then the brew is just she keeps circling this bush, circling and just looking. I'm like, what in the world? And I finally said, I said, "Hey Bob, is that deer in there and we're just not seeing it?" We both kind of walk up there, and that's when Bob says, "Oh, look at this." And that's when Bob found this right here up in the right hand corner, this chunk of gut. I'm like, oh no, what in the world? Um, that's why she won't leave this area, and she wouldn't. She was so intent. It's almost like, you know, once she walked up there, you see how high this gut blob was, and it was a handful of a gut blob. Um, it was stuck on the top of this bush, 4 foot high or however this is. You can see her looking at it there. Wow. So this deer, I guess, jumped over this bush pile at some point. I don't know when. I don't. It was probably when the hunter was looking and pushed him because I don't think it was we did it. It happened when I was there. I'm certain that we didn't happen when we were there. It's like, wow, what in the world? So I made a couple phone calls here. I'm like, oh no. Um, or set some pictures of this gut bush out to just getting other people's thoughts on it. And we're like, okay, you know what? Deer's clearly gut shot, and we kind of knew that because there was guts on the arrow. We knew it was partial gut anyway. But then then she picked up a line and she started going this way. And like, okay, well, she's really tracking. I'm like, man, as long as she's tracking, I wanted to let her go. So she tracked this line right here, got through this on the edge of this stuff. Now, this picture is a little bit deceiving. It looks like, we were out on the edge of the grass. We were really in some thick, brushy stuff along the edge of this thing here. And she's tracking along and she's getting pretty excited in here. She was very, very focused and intent on whatever she was tracking. And it's dark by this point. And the hunter finally says, "Hey man, because it was kind of difficult tracking in there." Hunter says, "Look, let's call it, man. Let's call it." So we pulled out, and this line is us walking back here. We walked back to the gut bush again, as what we call this area, the gut bush. We walked back to look at it, and then we got out of there. And I told him I'd come back in the morning because with the guts, and we started at the 7-hour mark. By the time we called it, it was about 8 hours after the shot, which is about when you want to start a liver hit. Remember, this deer was one lung, liver, gut. So we were ending at the 8-hour mark when that's really about the time the soonest we should have been taking up the track. But again, I'm not going to get into all of the reasons why. That's in the scent drift video, and you can go watch that. But so we left and came back, but and then we recovered the deer. So what do I think happened? Remember, I said in scent drift video that we found the deer right here. This distance is about 450 yards to the gut bush from the shot site. 450 to 500 yards. We never went back down here. So how did the deer get here? It wasn't there. We would have walked within feet of that deer. We did walk within feet of that deer. If it was there, we would have seen it. The dog would have smelled it. We would have found it. It wasn't there. I would have tripped on it. It wasn't there. What I believe happened, I don't know this for certain, but I am convinced this is what happened, that this was the real line of the deer. What I think had happened is the deer looped back around this way and then died right there sometime that night. I think we were pushing it when she was getting pretty ambitious on the track. I think we were on the hot line of the deer, and I think we were pushing it. And I think that deer just worked its way back around this way and died right there. Remember, right here was several wound beds, so it liked this area. It wanted to be here. So I really believe that's what happened again. I don't know for sure. I don't have a way to know that for sure, but I just think that's what happened. Just everything kind of stacks up that way. But, but without these goose chases right here, she likely would have been able to acquire this line sooner, assuming this is the real line. And I believe it was. But this sent us on a goose chase. Now, I learned some things on this track. I learned one of the things I learned is absolutely 100% go on the evidence you see, the physical evidence. We had physical evidence in a good bloodline, a fair amount of blood back here. The hunter was certain he had a good shot, and the initial bloodline proved it, but everything else suggested it. This deer needed more time than what we had it, particularly when we found the gut bush here, and then as the evidence on the arrow, and then as the hunter described the shot, I should have held off and either waited till the next morning or much later that night. to track this deer, we probably would have found him. Who knows where for sure. I suspect the hunter might have pushed him out of here. I don't think we did, but maybe we did. I don't know. But anyway, I think we would have found the deer, because I'm certain we were pushing him here. We might have found him in here, rather than looping back around and finding here the next morning. So, but this is what happens. This is the same type of thing happens here on a grid search. If, you start grid searching now, maybe it's not such a big area. If you grid search this area right here, you start wandering around, and then the dog's got to sort through all of that, or over here or whatever. This hunter did the right thing. I mean, there were mowed paths around this grassy area. He was walking these mowed paths, just trying to see if he could cut the line of the deer or see it laying in the grass. So he did nothing wrong. And I don't shame him from doing what he did, but by doing what he did, it did create these false lines that the dog run down. So maybe some of this is just having a young dog, a year old in our first season. She was on track 42. By that time, it would have been track 45 if you count the practice tracks we went on. So she didn't have a lot of experience either. So maybe that's some of it, but nonetheless, she was on it. And she was tracking. So one of the things that she and I are still working on as a team is me identifying true tracking and false line tracking. If you can even tell, I don't even know if some experienced teams can tell. But that comes in time. That comes in time with her too. She may eventually start to be able to distinguish better between a false line and a real line. But I really believe this was a real line. I like the way she was tracking here. I like, she was tracking very, very well here. This gut bush, all of this was very interesting. She acted like she found the prize. She didn't want to leave this because she acted, she thought she found the prize. And baby girl, sorry, you didn't. But then she found the line and she took this up, and then we called it, went back, and then she air scented it for the recovery. So, but anyway, guys, that's scent, not scent drift. I mean, that is that's false lines. So, the moral of the story: if a dog is an option for you, don't grid search. Those false lines there cost us extra time and energy on a dog. Remember, I talked about a dog that it's very fatiguing for a dog. Although dogs love it, it really wears a dog out. All of the mental stimulation and problem solving they're doing on all of this. So these three are known false lines. I wonder if I have another false line here. Nope. Oops, there we are as my son and I on a motorcycle. Oh, I know what I gotta do. Boy, I'm really goofing this up. Here it is. But anyway, we don't need to see it anymore. But anyway, guys, that's false lines. That's what could happen with false lines. So if you have any questions, drop a note in the comments, and I'll take a look at them. And if I can answer it, I will. If I can, I'll try to find the answer. If you want to share this with please feel free to do so. Until next time, guys, I appreciate you watching, and more of the good, less the bad. Talk to you soon.